If you're 60, this might be your first real chance to finally live the life you were meant to live. Not what the world told you, not what your job demanded, but you. And I'm going to show you why. This might be the most powerful chapter of your life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked around and wondered, is this all there is? Is it too late to change now? Maybe the house is quieter. Maybe the calendar is not as full. Maybe you've been holding back a dream for 20 years. You wake up and think, what's the point of starting over at 60? Well, here's the truth. You're not starting over. You're finally starting with wisdom. You know that Colonel Sanders started KFC at 62? Well, Laura Ingalls Wilder didn't publish her first Little House book until she was 65. Peter Mark Ryer invented thesaurus in his 70s. And in the modern world, millions of people in America, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand are reinventing themselves in their 60s and thriving. Why? Because today 60 is not what it used to be. By the way, before I go deeper, I want to know where you're listening from. Are you in the US, Canada, UK, Australia? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear from you. Really, let me know where this message is changing lives. Also, if you're enjoying this video, go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't. That way I know you appreciate what I do here. This video will open your eyes in a way you didn't expect. Now let's get into why this moment, this exact season of your life, is the perfect moment to begin again. You've done all the right things, worked hard, paid your bills, maybe raised a family, and yet something is missing. It's not uncommon to feel unseen after 60. The world often whispers, it's time to slow down. The younger ones take over. But what if I told you that's not just a lie, it's a dangerous lie? You see, experience is the ultimate currency, and you've been earning interest for 60 years. Let me say that again. You've been collecting wisdom, skills, and resilience for 6 decades. That's more value than most 30-year-olds can even imagine. Society rarely tells you this. They reward speed, not depth, trends, not legacy. So ask yourself, are you living on momentum from your past or building for your future? In a few minutes, I'm going to share how one Australian woman started a $1 million business from her kitchen at age 63 without tech skills or investors and the mindset shift that unlocked her success. But first, I want to give you something else, a new lens. Think about everything you've survived. Economic crashes, loss, career burnout. You've been tested repeatedly, and what's still here? You. So why does the world tell you your best days are behind you? Because it fears what a fully awake, fully alive, fully experienced human might do with their time, focus, and freedom. You are no longer reacting. You're choosing at 60. You don't chase approval. You own your perspective. Don't just learn lessons, you live them. There's a power in that, and it's rare. So if you're wondering, but Elon, what can I even do now? Hang on, because this is just the beginning. Let me show you something most people miss. The older you get, the less you have to prove. And the less you have to prove, the more power you have to create. Because creation needs clarity. And clarity often comes after the storms. You've probably been through 4 or 5 different life phases already. Each one broke something, but built something stronger underneath. Think about it. You've managed households, relationships, finances, crisis, supported others while hiding your own doubts. You've learned when to speak and when to stay silent. That's not just life. That's leadership training. Maybe God didn't give you the dream earlier because you weren't ready. Maybe the prayer you whispered in your 40s is being answered now, in your 60s. Instead of asking, why didn't this happen before, ask what if now is divine timing. What's something you've always wanted to do but thought you were too old for? Leave it in the comments. You'll be surprised how many others feel the same. Take 10 seconds, close your eyes, picture your life. A year from now, if you finally started the book, started the business, started painting again, started that community project, started speaking, started believing. Can you see it? That's not fantasy, that's potential. And potential doesn't expire. Here's your first action step. Take out a notebook right now and write this question at the top. What would I do if I knew it wasn't too late? Then write whatever comes to mind. No filters, judgment, just possibilities. That's how every new life begins, with the courage to imagine. Again, we'll talk about the three biggest lies society tells you about age and how those lies are silently destroying the dreams of millions over 60 before the end of this video. But once you see through them, you become unstoppable. So stay with me. We're just getting warmed up, because by the end of this journey, you'll see what your time is just beginning. You know what the most dangerous myth in the world is? That there's a deadline on who you can become. That after a certain age, the doors start closing, that you're supposed to wind down, retire, take it easy. Let me ask you a question. Who told you that? Who decided that when you stop dreaming? Because I'll tell you something, I know with absolute certainty that idea is a lie. And worse, it's a lie that's robbed millions of people of the most powerful years of their lives. Right now, at this very moment, there are thousands of people just like you, men and women across the US, across Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, who are being told to slow down, when this is exactly when they're supposed to finally wake up. Think about that. This might be the first time in your entire life when you're not building someone else's dream. You're not rushing to put food on the table for a growing family. You're not trying to prove yourself anymore. This is the first time your mind is actually clear enough to listen to what you want. So why waste that window? Let me tell you about a woman I met in Melbourne, Australia, not long ago. Her name was Ruth. She was 60, decided to start her first business. Not a tech company, not a startup in Silicon Valley, no bread shop, handmade sourdough, no fancy branding, just something she loved. She told me, I've waited my whole life to give myself permission to do this. Guess what? Within 2 years, she had 4 shops. And more importantly, she was finally happy, not because she became rich, but because for the first time she was living on her own terms. That's what I want for you. There's a reason your 60s are powerful. And it's not just because of wisdom or patience, it's because of pattern recognition. See, younger people have energy, but energy without clarity, it's noise. You have seen trends come and go. You've seen people promise the world and deliver nothing. You've watched life unfold like a film, and that gives you one massive advantage. You know what matters? You're no longer distracted by shiny objects. You've developed something no college degree can teach: discernment. And that discernment is the key to launch something meaningful. You don't need 10 years to get good at something anymore. You need clarity. You need intention. You need alignment. And those are things that only show up later in life after the noise fades away. Now, some of you might be listening and saying, but Elon, I don't have energy like I used to. And I hear that, but let me tell you something strange. I've learned over time, energy follows purpose, not the other way around. Your heart is alive. Your body keeps up. I've seen people in their 30s burn out. I've seen people in their 70s empires. And the difference isn't youth, it's belief. The moment you believe, you're just getting started. Everything inside you starts responding to that belief. So let me ask you, what are you telling yourself right now? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear it from every corner of the world. And while you're there, if this message is waking something up in you, like the video, and subscribe, it helps this message get to more people like you. You're here for a reason. I want to challenge one belief that's holding many people hostage. It's the belief that starting over is the same thing as starting from scratch. It's not starting over at 60. It's not going back to zero. It's like being handed a chessboard where half pieces have already been removed, and not by accident, by strategy. All the nonsense is gone, the fake friends, wasted time, the ego battles. You're starting from wisdom. That's not a weakness. That's leverage. Let me tell you a quick story from the States. There's a man named William who emailed me a while ago from Oregon. He worked for a paper company for 34 years. At 62, they let him go. He was devastated, felt betrayed. He thought it was over for him. But instead of giving up, he remembered something he used to love, fixing things. Long story short, he started a YouTube channel teaching seniors how to do simple home repairs. Nothing fancy, no tech tricks, just honest, helpful videos. Today, he has over 1 million subscribers, and he told me something I'll never forget. Elon, I thought I was being thrown out, but really I was being pushed into what I was meant to do. Now, I'm not saying you need to start a channel or open a shop or move across the country, but I am saying this. There is something in you that has waited decades for this chapter. And the clock hasn't run out. It's just started ticking for you. Let's pause here. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Even if you're listening while walking or sitting in your car, take a deep breath now. Ask yourself, what part of me have I been ignoring for 30 years? Is it the writer, the builder, the teacher, the dreamer? That part of you is not gone. It's just been waiting patiently. Don't you think it's time you gave it a chance? Next, we're going to talk about the new economy and why people over 60 are more needed than ever before. You don't want to miss that. We're not done. Not even close. Let me tell you this. The future belongs to the seasoned. Yeah, let that land for a second, because for decades you've been fed the opposite. Young minds are faster. Young people are more adaptable. They're better with technology. They understand where the world is going, right? But here's the part nobody's talking about. The modern economy is running into problems that only seasoned minds can solve. Here's the wild twist. While younger people are still trying to learn how to think clearly, you've been doing it under pressure for decades. And the world needs that more than ever. Let me explain. We're living in a time of instant answers, not deep thinking. Open social media, and there's a 23-year-old trying to teach you how to be rich. You ask a question on Google, and an AI spits out 5 quick hacks. But the world doesn't need more hacks. It needs judgment. It needs emotional intelligence. It needs calm under pressure. Well, those are things 25-year-old can offer at scale. Not because they're not smart, but because they haven't lived long enough to see the patterns. Let me share a story from Germany. There's a man named Henrik, years old, who had worked in logistics his entire life, warehousing, supply, chains, freight. For decades, he was just part of the system, a cog. Then in 2022, a huge shipping delay crisis hit Europe. Port backups, rail bottlenecks, fuel issues. You know who they called? Henrik. Not some tech bro with a slide deck. Not a 30-year-old analyst with spreadsheets. They called the guy who knew where every choke point lived because he'd walked it, fixed it, worked it for 30-plus years. He didn't just help. He redesigned part of their logistics network. Now he consults globally for companies who used to ignore him. And here's the lesson. When the world gets complicated, the world calls experience. And you, my friend, are carrying more of that than you give yourself credit for. Here's another from Manitoba, Canada. Sandra, age 65, former high school principal. She retired. Thought she'd take it easy. Then during CO, thousands of kids were falling behind. Parents were overwhelmed. Launched an online tutoring program for seniors who had been educators. Within a year, over 1,800 retired teachers were helping thousands of kids across North America catch up. You want to hear the punchline? Most of the volunteers said they felt more alive than they had in 20 years. Why? Because they were finally being needed again. And not in a shallow way, in a mission-critical way. You might think your value has gone down with age, but that's because you've been looking at the wrong scoreboard. You've been measuring yourself against youth culture, but the real economy, the one that solves real problems, is quietly being rebuilt by people who've lived enough life to understand those problems. And that's you. Let's get interactive for a moment. I want you to do this right now in the comments. Tell me the one thing you've mastered over the years. Could be a skill, a mindset, a routine, a field. What's your real world wisdom? Drop it below. Not just for me, drop it for everyone else here who needs to see how valuable your experience is. Whether you're in New York, Vancouver, Manchester, Sydney, post it below. I'm reading them all. You have no idea how many people your story can awaken. Now here's the big twist. There's a global workforce crisis happening right now, but nobody's talking about the solution. Governments are panicking about aging populations. Companies are struggling to find dependable talent. AI is replacing repetitive jobs, but not relational ones. And who's the missing link? You. People with emotional range. People who failed and rebounded. People who know how to lead quietly, not chase titles. In Japan right now, the workforce is over 60. And guess what? They have lower stress, fewer absences, and higher mentorship ratings than their younger counterparts. Some companies even prefer to hire post-retirement age employees because they bring something rare in this chaotic economy: stability. You know how to weather storms. You've already done. They don't need to be handheld. That's not a liability. That's the gold standard. Here's a question I want you to think about tonight. What if everything you've survived wasn't just life experience, but actual marketable currency? What if your setbacks were assets? What if your quiet strength is the exact medicine this noisy world is begging for? I want to show you how to turn that into something real. But not yet. That's coming before the end of this video. We're building this step by step because transformation isn't a moment, it's a reawakening, and I want you fully awake by the time we get there. Next, we're going to talk about something personal. Why 60 is the most emotionally intelligent decade of your life, and how that unlocks leadership, relationships, and healing. This is where things shift inward. Let me ask you something deeply personal. What dream did you quietly bury because the world convinced you you're too old now? Was it the business you never started? The language you never learned? The book you never wrote? What if I told you that wasn't the end of your story, just the wrong chapter? And this chapter right now at 60 or even 70 could be your most important. In a few moments, I'll reveal a quiet truth that almost no one talks about. A truth that explains why the most powerful phase of your life doesn't begin at 30 or 40, but right here in
your 60s.
But first, let's talk about something that's robbing millions of adults of a second chance. It's not time, it's not money, it's something invisible, but incredibly destructive. Mental expiry bias. This is the lie society whispers. You're expired, had your chance. It's too late now. It's like putting a sticker on your potential best before age 45. You're not a milk carton. You're not some product to be used up and discarded. You're a human being designed to grow, adapt, and evolve until your final breath. Let me tell you a story. In France, there's a woman named Sylvie Guichard who was a retired math teacher in her early 60s. After a quiet life of education, she found herself widowed, alone, and convinced her meaningful years were behind her. One day, on a visit to Lyon, she saw a small robotics workshop for kids. She walked in curious. By the end of that week, she was volunteering to teach programming logic. 6 months later, she began learning Python, a coding language, alongside teenagers. And just a year after that, she helped design a robotics prototype for a regional innovation fair. Now she teaches seniors how to code. And her words, at 63, I started something that made me feel 30 again. Not because I became younger, but because I felt useful again. That's not just a story, that's proof. So let me ask you, what invisible expiration label are you living under right now? Who told you it was too late for you? And more importantly, why did you believe them? I'll tell you this, Your brain doesn't stop growing at 40. Your impact doesn't stop expanding at 50. And usefulness doesn't end at 60. Science backs this up. The London taxi driver study showed that the brain's hippocampus responsible for memory and spatial reasoning continued growing even in people well into their 60s and 70s. Growth isn't youth's privilege. You pushed aside because life got busy. Write it, then go to Google and type skill for beginners over 60. You'll be shocked at what's out there waiting for storytelling, 3D printing, or hydroponics. There is no expiration date on curiosity. Tell me in the comments what's one skill you're committing to explore again. Let's build a wave of late bloomers proving the world wrong. Now some of you might be wondering, but Elon, what if I've already wasted so many years? Let me say this gently, but clearly. God has never wasted a season of your life. Even if you did, not one tear, not one failure, not one lost opportunity is beyond redemption. And prayer, real quiet reflection, has helped some of the greatest minds re-enter and restart. If you feel unsure, start there. Because wisdom is something we chase. It's something we ask for. Here's your move. 1. Challenge the exploration bias. Say it out loud. I'm not expired. I'm evolving. 2. Start a micro journey, not a big leap. Just 20 minutes a day. That's it. You'd be amazed what that adds up to in 3 months. 3. Connect with others. Join a local community class, online course, or support forum. Don't isolate. Isolation is a dream killer. Next, I'm going to show you why most people over 60 secretly hold the advantage in life-changing decisions, but don't know how to unlock it. There's a hidden strength inside you, and we're going to pull it out. So don't miss what comes next. Let's cut to the truth. Being taught your age is a liability. That wisdom is just a nice word for old, the greatest hidden asset in today's world. And if you're 60 or older, you're already sitting on gold. You just haven't learned how to spend it. In a moment, I'll show you how. One 7-old woman in New Zealand turned a lifetime of knowledge into a thriving micro-business without touching social media or digital tools. See, the world is obsessed with youth, startups, disruption, speed, tech, all great things. But here's the problem. Youth often has ideas without insight, speed without strategy, confidence without calibration. And that's where you come in, because you've lived through more recessions. You've seen inflation, crashes, politics, cycles. You know how to think beyond TikTok trends. But if no one tells you that your wisdom matters, you'll sit quietly while the world burns down repeating the mistakes you already survived. Let me take you to Dunedin, New Zealand. There's a woman named Margaret Wells, age 74. For most of her life, she made traditional wool garments, scarves, mittens, and socks using techniques passed down from her grandmother. Hand-spun, hand-dyed, stitched with absolute care. For years, she sold her work at the local Sunday market. Nothing flashy, just a table, chair, and her warm laugh. Then one day, a young couple visiting from Oakland stopped by and asked, "Why do your mittens feel softer than the ones in the shops?" She smiled and said, "Because I don't rush. Well, knows when you're in a hurry." They ended up staying 40 minutes just listening to her stories about cheap farming, slow crafting, old values of making things that last. A few weeks later, that couple returned with a friend who ran a boutique hiking lodge. Margaret's woolwear became their exclusive winter gear. Today, she can't keep up with the orders, but she doesn't want to. She says, "I only make 8 pieces a week. I'm not trying to scale. I'm trying to stay in love with the process." And guess what? People wait months for her work because they're not buying mittens. They're buying a story, a feeling, a way of life. And that's what wisdom sells. So let me ask you something. What do you know so well that people come to you for advice, even if you don't charge for it? Is it cooking, fixing things, gardening, managing money, encouraging others? Truth when people are afraid. That's wisdom. And it's waiting to be monetized, shared, passed down. First, you have to stop calling it nothing. I want you to do this today. Take a notebook or your phone and make a list of 10 things I've learned the hard way. Not theory, real lessons you earned with sweat, loss, mistakes, failure, time. Then ask yourself who in my community or family is about to face these same problems. Because the most powerful thing you can do isn't start a company. It shortens someone else's learning curve. That's impact. That's legacy. That's leverage. In a small town near Osaka, I met a man named Tishi, age 67. After retiring from logistics, he did something shocking. He didn't slow down. He started volunteering at a local coding boot camp, not as a teacher, but as a wisdom advisor. Job, keep students grounded, help them navigate stress, teach them how to think long term. When I asked him why, simply said, code changes every year. But good judgment, that's timeless. Guess what? Tech companies now pay Tishi to mentor their young developers, not on software, but on how to handle pressure, ethics, and failure. Doesn't even code. But his wisdom saves companies thousands in employee turnover. You've been told to move fast and break things. But maybe what the world needs now is someone who moves slow and builds things that last. That's you. If you've raised a family, built a career, survived heartbreak, buried loved ones, you are qualified to lead whether anyone gave you a title or not. You know, wisdom isn't just information. It's divine filtration. It's what God gives you after you've endured storms. You didn't think you'd survive. And if you're still standing, that means you're carrying something someone else is desperately praying for right now. You're the answer to someone's question, the guide for someone else's confusion, the calm for someone else's chaos, but only if you choose to speak. Next, I'm going to show you how to take your wisdom and turn it into a second career, a mentorship movement, or even a brand. So don't miss it. Here's the hard truth. If you don't use what life gave you, you'll end up watching someone with half your wisdom lead people nowhere. And that's not just frustrating, it's dangerous, because the next generation, they're not looking for perfection. They're desperate for direction. But here's the kicker. They're not going to ask for your wisdom. You'll have to offer it intentionally, creatively, even quietly. But when you do, you become the guide. You become the mirror. You become the person you wish you had at 20. Me show you exactly how, step by step, with real stories from people just like you. Take a second and answer this. Your head. What is one thing you've learned the hard way that you would never want your grandchild to go through? Got it? That's the seed of your second life. You don't need to become a social media influencer. Need to become a trusted voice. And in this next story, you'll see how that changes lives. Even in a tiny town in Europe, in a quiet village in northern Portugal, there's a man named Antonio Silva, aged 68. For decades, Antonio made owls, traditional Portuguese ceramic tiles by hand. His shop was small and his income was modest. He never imagined becoming anything more than a craftsman. But when CO hit, tourism dried up, shops closed, orders vanished, and Antonio thought it was over until his niece convinced him to host a tile painting demonstration on Zoom for her art class in France. He was terrified. He didn't speak English well, he wasn't tech savvy, he had no idea where to start. But the students loved it. They asked questions, they laughed, they learned, so he did it again and again. Today, Antonio runs virtual workshops every month for international universities, earning 5 times what he used to, all from his home. But more than money, Antonio says, now I don't just make tiles. I make culture live on. And it all started because he was willing to teach what he already knew. Let me ask you, what do people always thank you for? What do friends call you about? What skill feels so natural to you? You assume it's just normal. That's not normal. That's your genius in disguise. The key to your next chapter isn't in reinventing yourself. It's in rediscovering what you've already survived. And it doesn't have to be big. Let me show you. Meet Brigitta, retired civil servant in Uppsala, Sweden, who used to work in municipal finance. Numbers, budgets, spreadsheets, nothing sexy, nothing social. After retiring, she felt invisible until one day she posted on a Swedish forum, "Here's how I helped my daughter pay off her student debt in 4 years without any fancy investing." It went viral. Why? Because she used plain words, clear numbers, and no exaggeration. Today, Brigitta runs a small online newsletter where she teaches simple financial lessons, budgeting, living with less, and how to stay debt-free. She now has more than 30,000 readers all across Europe. She calls it her retirement bonus project. She doesn't sell expensive programs. She simply shares what is true and what actually works. Because in this world, realness is the new influence. Let's do something meaningful right now. Write this down. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I was 30. Just that. Now finish the sentence with one short paragraph or even a single line. Then stop and ask yourself, who needs to hear this right now? Maybe a neighbor, maybe a friend's child, maybe even a stranger online. Congratulations, you just created your first mentorship message. The next step is to share it. This isn't about starting a business. It's about starting a ripple effect. Because in God's kingdom, nothing you've gone through is wasted. Pain can be redeemed, regret can be used, and lessons are priceless. But only if you give them away. Legacy isn't about being remembered. It's about helping another person avoid the same mistakes you almost didn't survive. In Hamburg, Germany, there was a retired nurse named Ute who carried one heavy thing in her heart: grief. After losing her husband, her sister, and 2 patients she deeply cared for, she said, "I needed a place to cry, but I didn't want therapy. I wanted connection." So she began a grief circle right in her own apartment. She set out tea, lit candles, and placed open chairs. 3 people came the first night, then 8, then 20. Today, Ute leads grief gatherings in public libraries, Zoom meetings, and even hospitals. Free for anyone who needs it. She doesn't have a platform. She doesn't chase attention, but she has touched more than 400 lives by leading with her wound, not her resume. And that's the real question for you. Will you take your wisdom with you to the grave, or will you start to use it now like the divine currency it truly is? Because here's the truth. You don't need more degrees, more titles, or more certificates. What you need is courage to speak from what you've already lived and what you already know. Now let's unlock something powerful, how your personal story with its flaws, failures, fears, and even shame can become your greatest tool for legacy. We'll go through how to shape your story, how to use it to guide others, and how to turn it into a message that keeps working long after you're gone. And we'll also uncover the 3 biggest lies the world tells you about age. This is important because that's where everything comes together. In London, there is a man named Trevor Simmons, once a car mechanic. At 73, he believed his story didn't matter. He wasn't known, didn't attend university, didn't write a book. But his 10-year-old granddaughter was struggling, bullied, anxious, and losing hope. One day, Trevor sat her down and shared something he had never told anyone. As a child, he had been beaten, shamed, and called worthless. That pain was why he learned how machines worked, because machines didn't lie to him. That story gave his granddaughter a picture of resilience, but it didn't stop there. His daughter posted the story online. It went viral. Thousands of people responded. Why? Because one man's buried hurt became another generation's anchor. Your story is not small. It has only been silent. Here's the trap we fall into. You think your story needs to sound like a TED Talk. Wrong. What people crave is truth. Let me tell you about Denise from Ohio. Twice divorced, 2 bankruptcies, and a son in rehab. She thought her whole life was nothing but a warning sign, not a testimony. But then she started writing short letters in her church bulletin to mothers who were struggling. She didn't preach. She didn't fake it. She simply wrote as if she were speaking to herself 10 years earlier. Today, Denise runs a nonprofit mentorship group for single mothers across 5 states. No spotlight, No big stage, just a real story shared with honesty. The story you think makes you unworthy is often the exact story that makes others trust you. You don't need big words, you just need 3 moments. First, the crash. What broke you? What moment humbled you? Second, the mirror. What did you realize about yourself in that pain? Third, the shift. What step did you take? Even if it was tiny. Let me show you an example from Canada. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, a man named Amir opened a cafe not to profit, but for people recovering from addiction. Why? Because 10 years earlier, Amir had been sleeping on the street. One day, stranger gave him a cup of coffee and a few minutes of conversation. That simple act made him feel human again. When he got clean, he promised to do the same for others. So he opened a cafe with no prices, just a donation jar and a place to talk. Today, his cafe is a home for people who felt invisible. On one wall is painted his story. Once I was nothing. Then someone saw me. Now I will see you. That is the true power of storytelling when it is not about spotlight but about service. And now the 3 biggest lies society tells you about age. The lies that keep you silent. Lie number 1, you're too old to start again. The truth is, wisdom grows with time. Action after 50 is not late, it's legendary. Winston Churchill became Prime Minister at 65. Colonel Sanders franchised K at 62. And Amir opened that cafe at 58. Don't count your years, count your scars, because those scars are your real resume. Lie number 2, no one cares about your story. Wrong again. People are drowning in noise. What they are desperately searching for is truth. Not polished perfection, but real, raw, earned wisdom. If you're over 40, you have already survived something that someone else has not yet faced. That makes your story a map. Lie number 3, it's selfish to talk about your story. The truth is, it is selfish not to. When you hide your story, you hide the survival guide that someone else is crying out for. It isn't about ego. It's about legacy. Your past wasn't wasted. It's the seed for someone else's healing. Let's do something brave right now. Take a pen and write this down. First, before I learned forgiveness, before I found peace, before I admitted I was lost. Second, then I realized, 1 true sentence. Third, now I help. Who you help? With what? Even if it's just 1 person. That is your legacy story. It doesn't need 1,000,000 listeners. It only needs 1. If your story changes even a single life, it was worth everything. Here's what happens when you never tell your story. Someone else, less wise, less honest, less kind, will step into that space. They will fill the air with noise where you could have brought clarity. They will offer hype where you could have brought healing. And that is not acceptable, because you earned this wisdom. You bled for it. You carried it through storms no one else saw. Now it is yours to give. Say this right now out loud: I survived for a reason. And starting today, I will speak like it. Because the truth is, you are the message. You are the mentor. You are the mirror someone has been praying for. So tonight, here's what I want you to do. Record 1 voice memo, write 1 email, tell 1 person 1 truth you learned that cost you everything. That's how you begin. Not with followers, not with applause, but with love. Your life was not meant to fade in silence. It was meant to echo forever. Playlist for more videos like this. I will see you in the next one.